In this video, we're going to break down the Slurp'it MCP server solution. So an MCP server in the context of Slurp'it would allow you to talk to your infrastructure using just natural language, using plain English, so to speak. And that is possible because we are leveraging the power of LLMs or language models. So basically, you're allowed to run CRUD operations on your infrastructure, on the data you have on Slurp'it, using just plain English. For example, you can list all the devices or a specific device with a specific tag or IP address. You can create devices, you can delete devices, and basically the whole CRUD create, read, update, and delete operations. And the nicest thing about this, it is extremely simple to set up, and you're going to see we can get this up and running in less than 2 minutes. So if you want to follow along, you go to the Slurp'it IO organization page on GitLab, you click on Slurp'it MCP server project, and once you do that, you can clone down the project using SSH or HTTPS. We're going to do that now, but before that, I'm just going to quickly go over to a diagram I have, and I will show you how the whole workflow works. If you're not interested, you don't need to actually know these components. But for folks who are interested, is actually a descriptive diagram that shows you how each of these components work with each other. So here we have the workflow, and there are a few stages. First, the user would type the query. For example, again, in plain English, we say list all the devices. Once we do that, we're going to talk to the client container. And the client container is literally a Docker container, which is responsible for talking to the language models, the LLMs, and at the time of transmission, it is going to process user requests. At the time of reception, it's going to process the server response. And the client container will talk to the server container using just MCP transmission or MCP HTTP call. And the implementation of HTTP in this case is SSE or server sent event. It is more of a long-lived streaming use of just the traditional or regular HTTP. Once the server container, again another Docker container, is invoked, then it is responsible for handling the tools. You're going to see the tools in the lab, and it is basically containing the Slurp'it SDK as well, which is actually going to call the Slurp'it APIs through the tools and the endpoints that it is provided with. And our MCP server, the server container, is written in fastMCP, which is a Python package. Once the query reaches Slurp'it through the API, then we are going to fetch and return the response. For example, in this case, we're going to fetch and return all the devices, and the whole process is going to be backwards. We go from Slurp'it to the server container, to the MCP call, to the client container, eventually to the user. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go to the lab and clone down the project. Git clone. Open it with my editor. So just before we start, we have to change the environment variables. And there are two environment variables. Here, there is one inside the clients folder and one in the server folder. So I'm just going to copy and paste, but I am going to rename this to be .env. So you have to keep in mind that you have to use one language model at a time. So for example, you can't really do GPT and DeepSeek at the same time. If you want to use either one, you have to comment out the other ones. So I'm just going to comment this out. Memory enable can be true. Verbose can be true or false. So this is going to be our MCP server URL. If you want, you can change that obviously. Model is going to be GPT-4 or Mini in my case. And I have an API key, which I'm going to paste, but I'm not going to show you. I will do that and come back. So I pasted my API key. Now I will go to the other folder, server, and basically do the same thing. Rename this to be .env. And this is going to be my Slurp'it host. I'm going to use our sandbox now and the API key that is on the sandbox. Basically, that's it. paste. I will go here. So on the Slurp'it sandbox, I'm gonna go to admin, API key, and click on this. Paste and save. So let's go to documentations again. Here, after doing all of these, I am going to spin up the container by saying docker compose up build and -d. Here I will paste. It's gonna take a few seconds, so I'll pause it and come back. Looks like the containers are created. I will go to Docker desktop and see that it is healthy and running. So I will go to documentations again, and the last thing we need is this line. And here it says to interact with the client, open a new terminal and execute. So back to the code editor, paste, and it needs to be sudo. There we go. This is a good sign. It is telling me the server information, the MCP server information, the model, and whether memory is enabled or not, and verbosity. So here you can enter your prompt, but we actually provided you with a lot of good prompt examples for this use case. So if you click on example MCP prompts, this is an MD file. You can also go to the repository and see it from here. I think this is more readable. So if I go to example MCP prompts, you're going to have prompts related to different operations, related to listing data, or creating and deleting data. So here for the first one, I will copy the first one, list all devices on the Slurp'it platform showing ID, host name, and so on. So I will go here, paste, and run. Sure enough, we get the list of devices. I believe there is 10 of them, plus all their metadata like FQDN, IP address, and the rest. We can actually create something. So for example, device edge NL01 with these specifications. So copy, paste, enter. And unfortunately, it seems like we don't have write access using MCP. We either have to use the platform's UI or just plain API. So that's basically it. As long as you have the right privileges, you're allowed to run CRUD operations on your Slurp'it instance through the MCP server implementation.